What we're saying to all of you is that you are big dreamers and big creators, not small thinkers and mediocre creators. And when you approach life from your physical standpoint of moving stuff around, you create so much less than you are capable of, that you begin to believe in your unworthiness, for which you ask for forgiveness. On the other hand, if you're dreaming and allowing yourself to hook in to the dreaming that your inner being has already accomplished on your behalf, then in your full connection, there is no unworthiness. There is no need for forgiveness. There is wholeness and clarity that just leads to one great idea and one great experience after another. Deliberate creation is taking the bounce from what is, but not looking back at what you bounced from. Deliberate creation is accepting that who you are right now is a byproduct of your culture and your heritage and your family and the way life touched you. And it is you as far as you have allowed yourself to demonstrate. But there's another part of you that you haven't introduced yourself to enough. There's another part of you who exists vibrationally over here in the vortex that is light and free and sure and whole. To the extent that you've allowed yourself to manifest is a small comparison to the part of you that you've not yet allowed yourself to manifest. What's in your bank account is only what you've let in through your variation of unfocused thoughts. But the vibrational reality and your vibrational escrow contains so much more. And you have ready access to it if you can cling to what is a little less and dream what is a little more. So we're not actually asking you to form the dream. We're asking you to receive the dream. We're saying to you that through life, you knew what you didn't want and you launched a rocket about what you did. Every time you touched one end of the stick, you created the other end of the stick. And the other end of the stick is this vibrational reality that we are talking about, that is not just possibility and not only probability, it is absolute ability. In other words, it is for sure, for sure, for sure. If you have lived one end of the stick, you've created the other end of the stick. We just want you to turn your attention from that end of the stick and to this end of the stick. Pulling out all the stops and giving you everything we've got in relationship to this. So what that means is that with everything that you've lived, you put a piece of it in your vortex. Everything that you've lived, you put another piece in the vortex. And your inner being has been there receiving it, becoming it, focusing on the whole of what it means, taking the pieces of the dream that you've put there, or the ingredients of the dream that you've been putting there, and seeing it as the whole of the dream that you've created that you can't see, that your inner being can see. So now what we're suggesting is that if you can find one piece of that good feeling dream and use it as your focal point so that you activate, then you'll hook up, zoom, with your inner being who sees the whole thing. And then all manner of ideas and rendezvous and impulses and urges will begin to flow into your experience. And if you've ever had the exhilarating experience of talking with a master of anything, that's the way they describe their life to be. They're in this place, they sometimes call it just an open space, when an idea flows and they can feel the impact of that idea. And when they follow through on it, it's like heaven and earth. It's like everything that exists in the universe becomes a cooperative component, all responding to the action that they are offering with their thought, you see. And so if we were standing in your physical shoes, we would be a little less attentive to the things that have already manifested, because it's old news. It's like gum you've chewed the flavor out of. And would be more attentive to what's in the vortex. And when we catch a glimpse of something that felt particularly good, we would milk it until we were sure that we had identified and isolated the feeling of that. And then we would sit for as long as we can give ourselves permission to do, which we would encourage you to carve out larger and larger times. Do you ever remember just lying in the grass when you were a kid and just letting your mind go? That's what we're talking about. Being someplace where somebody won't interrupt you, where from that place of alignment that you know that you've accomplished because you can feel the power of it, you just let your mind take it. You let your mind be the receptacle for the thinking of your own inner being. You let your mind be the thinking, receiving mechanism for the thoughts that the source within you thinks. You let yourself feel and hear and think. You let your mind translate, as Esther's is translating for us right now. These are not Esther's thoughts. These are our thoughts that are moving through Esther's mind. Our thoughts that are moving through Esther's mind, and she's finding the physical equivalent words to express for them. And you will find the physical everything equivalent. The urge, the impulse, the feeling. You'll be driving down a street one day and you'll feel like stopping at 7-Eleven, and you won't know why, because you don't like the slushies there. But you're in there because you felt like going in there, and you see something and you think, well, maybe that was it. I did need Kleenex, and maybe that was it. I did want a bottle of water. But then on the way out, you have an impulse to buy that ticket, and when you do, it's a winner. And you recognize it after the fact. What we want you to do is recognize it before the fact. We want you to follow the feeling without the payoff, because the feeling is the payoff. We want you to follow the feeling without the payoff, because the heightened feeling is the payoff. And once you get hooked on the feeling, once you get hooked on the feeling of alignment, then what happens is the payoffs start coming, and then you'll be hard-pressed, as we are, to explain it to anybody else, because they won't be really ready to get it. They'll want to know, how did you get there? How did you know when to stop? How did you know? Oh, and then they want to call it luck. No, it wasn't luck. It was inspiration. It was intuitiveness. It was in the vortexness. It was being in the vicinity of the vortex. It was following an impulse that I'd learned to practice. You are the creator of your own reality. But if you're like most humans, you've been going about it in a rather physical, conventional way, where you're counting on action, you're counting on effort, you believe in sacrifice and trying hard, and you believe in competition, and you're aware of where you stand in relationships to others, and in all of that, you're doing just fine. You've come out ahead in many ways. And most people who look at you are thinking that you're doing all right. And you've developed some attitudes of feeling proud of yourself, and that's all good. And with all of that said, you are still dreaming far beyond your current ability to reach it. And that is causing discord within you, because you want more than you're letting in. And we can talk all day about applying more action, or about giving something more time. We can talk all day about moving up the emotional scale, about finding processes that make you feel better. We talk a lot. We do talk all day about reaching for the thought that feels the best, because we know that the thought that feels the best is the thought with least resistance, and the thought with least resistance is the thought that has most power. But today, you've moved by the power of your desire into something that we don't encourage very often. We witness it from time to time. And it's what you would call a sort of quantum leap. And a quantum leap happens when there are enough people who are focused upon something that they desire, even though it may feel nebulous, as it has somewhat in this room today. In an atmosphere of lots of non-physical focus, so that there's enough shifting. It's also called a paradigm shift, when there's enough shifting in the energy to make a real difference in the way you stand, so that your point of attraction is shifted enough that you will begin to see results that will make you believe. We would like it if we could offer enough clarity of knowing, and Esther could match up with enough words, and we could reach out into the audience and find enough demonstrators of conversation that it would be really easy for you to make that shift just based upon what happened today. In other words, wouldn't it be nice if we could just know it so much and speak it so clearly that you could hear it and know it too, and go off and perform the joyous life experience that you want to live? But that's not how it works, because words don't teach. It's only life experience that teaches. And so instead, what we do is offer words, and maybe enough of them that you find resonance with what you've already lived. And then from the conversation that we have, you take away with it a decision that you've never made before. A decision that's a strong enough decision that the decision will stand even in the face of the other things that you're usually living. A decision to reach for a thought, any thought that feels good, and to embrace it long enough that it blooms into something that is more. We've been saying to you for a while that when you watch someone like Esther standing on a stage and speaking with clarity and certainty, she certainly appears to believe what she's saying, that often you might go away as members of an audience thinking, well, that's someone who certainly has a philosophy of life, and that person certainly does believe it, and I got some tips from it that maybe I can apply. But as far as any real practical movement in your energy, not a whole lot happens with a conversation. It's in a room like this on a day like today. But if one of the things that you heard was, when you meditate, you stop thought, and when you stop thought, you stop resistance, and when resistance stops, your vibration rises, and when your vibration rises, you find vibrational equivalency with your inner being. If that thought captivated you enough that you decide that you're going to set some time aside every day to quiet your mind, and you quiet your mind and you get to that sort of detached place, and nothing earth-shattering happens during your meditation except that you got sort of numb and didn't try hard and didn't have any thoughts. And then as you came out of meditation, maybe something occurs to you that feels like something that you want to do. It feels like the things that we were describing here. It's an uplifting feeling. It's not a world-changing feeling. It's not necessarily a big call to action. You're not all of a sudden calling your friends and saying, I've got the secret to life. It's just an idea that felt fresh and light, and it felt good to you, and it felt good enough to you. And because you've been meditating and you have no resistance, in your absence of resistance, you feel inspired to treat yourself to the journey of a good feeling thought. So you give yourself permission to follow this thought out a little further, rather than go back to work like you think you should, or rather than go mow the lawn like somebody expects you to, or rather than go do something that somebody else is expecting you to do. Instead, you follow the impulse of this good feeling thought, and in following the impulse of this good feeling thought, it leads to something that for sure you knew was also another good feeling thought, until you followed the thread, you followed the trend, you followed the stream of good feeling thoughts right into a manifestation of something that you've been wanting for a while. And then from that experience you say, I get it. I now have the understanding of how this all works. Life caused me to do step one. I ask. Contrast keeps me asking all over the place. And when I ask, I activate the end of the stick of what I don't want, and I also activate the end of the stick of what I do want, and the activation of the end of the stick of what I do want becomes my vibrational reality. And little by little, through my step one-ing, I have created a magnificent creation, and now my inner being and all that is standing right smack dab in the middle of my vibrational reality, performing step two. I ask, they are giving, because they know the path to everything. They know where you stand in relationship to everything that you want. They know what resistance you've sprinkled along the trail, and they are not mad at you for sprinkling resistance along your trail. They know where it is, and they know how to guide you around it. They know what thought to offer to you that will give you an impulse to go over there, and then what thought to offer to you to give you an impulse to go over there. So step one is done, and so is step two. Step three is you meditated yourself into step three. You quieted your mind and you stopped resistance. Step three is getting into the receiving mode, and all that get into the receiving mode means is releasing resistance, because when you hold the cork under the water, that's resistance. When you let go, it bobs up to the vibrational equivalency of who you really are. So step three is what we've been talking about. You find alignment with your source energy. You find, through quieting your mind, the vibrational equivalency of what your inner being knows.